Hello everybody and welcome back. It's past midnight now in a very rainy Lancashire, and we'll carry on from where we left off yesterday with the story from all across the globe of Bigfoots and the people that they take. And we just finished on a report from Ohio in 1962 of a woman who claimed to have been kidnapped by a group of Bigfoot after they had repeatedly visited her family home when she was only 12 years old. The creatures had repeatedly approached the home and gotten into the habit of whisking away the girl during the night. On some occasions, the father had barged in with his 12-gauge shotgun to shoot the creatures, which seemed to have little effect. The biggest of the beasts was reported as being a whopping 14 feet tall. She would describe the creature thus: his hair was long and about the same texture as mine, as I recall. The hair on all of them was about the same shade of brown, like the colour of the decomposed wood layer in the forest. I could see skin around his eyes that was tanned looking, and where there was facial hair, it was more sparse, with glimpses of skin showing through the area as well. I couldn't make out a neck, and his chin was broad. His teeth were about the size of the nail on my middle finger, but they were more flat, and he had a mouthful of them, meaning the width of his bite was wide. His mouth was wide enough to show most of them, and his eyes were dark with some kind of white around them. Less so than human eyes, but white all the same. They were kind with crow's feet at the outer edge. His eyes were weathered like anyone who spent much time outside, like a farmer. His shoulders were very broad, though I did see his collarbone on one side, which looked thick compared to humans. He was muscular and heavily built, but in no way fat. There was an adult female and others who were almost as big as the female, but didn't seem to be young or old. The girl claimed that she was taken far away from her home by the creatures, but she did not remember what had transpired during the kidnappings. She only knew that she would be gone the whole night. At one point, things became more sinister. The girl remembers walking within a cabin or cave in which water was dripping from roots emerging from the ground above. At this point, she could see the strange beast surrounded her as she lay upon a slab of rock. She said of the situation, "I wanted badly to scream some more, but I was just too tired to do that anymore. When I relaxed, they all started smiling and laughing. I thought, okay, they could have killed me and eaten me, but they didn't. Evidently, some of them are kind. But then again, I've seen cats play with mice for hours before they kill and eat them." The girl would invariably end up back in her home and was never harmed, but this did little to put the family at ease. The strange creatures would allegedly continue to harass the house, banging on the walls and tapping on windows, as well as huffing and grunting loudly outside at night. They would often communicate with each other outside the home, of which the woman would say, "The sounds they made were a deep bass laughing, a chortling snickering, and sounds like someone who couldn't pronounce words well. They communicated with each other, and with their thoughts, just as the male did with me. I had no interactions from the younger ones, and the female adult only smiled or sighed heavily while looking at me." For the longest time, the woman kept her family story secret, for fear of being ridiculed, but finally came forth in an effort to get others to share their experiences, and she would go on to say of her reasons to come forward. "I hope it brings awareness for the suffering of experiencers and witnesses and allows them to speak openly about what has happened to them. Unless we all speak the truth, the world won't know what's been hidden and still being hidden from us. Do we want future generations to carry on living the same lie? Our world is richer and more interesting than most. These are not just creatures, they are quite intelligent and resourceful enough to keep from being caught or killed." And this leads me to a very old tale And this is a tale of Seraphina Long. And this Seraphina Long was the lady that gave birth to a Bigfoot. The story of Seraphina Long was given to the world by J.W. Burns, who was looking for evidence of a creature he would come to call Sasquatch in the western area of Washington. For centuries, the Native Americans of the area, the Chehalis, told stories of their battles with the local Bigfoot. What is the plural for Bigfoot? Nobody knows. Anyway, as Chehalis told it, the Bigfoot lived in Mount Morris. At night, the Chehalis people would see the fires of the Bigfoot set in the mountains so they could look over the lands they'd lost to the tribe. Sometimes, a few of the Bigfoot would come out of the mountains and mess with the Chehalis people. But it was nothing the Chehalis couldn't handle. And it was during one of those times when Seraphine Long found herself caught in the middle of it all. Seraphine was just 17 in 1871, and she was out and about doing things that every 17-year-old Chehalis girl did, when her life took a drastic turn. From out of the woods surrounding the mountain came a Sasquatch. The Sasquatch, as Seraphina told it, snagged her up and carried her into the woods. Once they were deep in the woods, the Sasquatch covered her eyes with pine pitch so she could not see. The Sasquatch took Seraphine to a cave where other Bigfoot were hanging out, and as far as Seraphine could figure, these other Bigfoot were the parents of the one who took her. For a year, Seraphine was held by these Bigfoot. She was, in essence, the property of the Sasquatch, who took her from her home. Seraphine said that the Sasquatch was kind to her, and that there was a mutual love between them. But her, not being a Bigfoot, she found the life of a Bigfoot to be really difficult. Seraphine became sicker and sicker as throughout the year, adding to her health issues, she became pregnant. The Sasquatch that had taken Seraphine covered her eyes in pine pitch again, picked her up and brought her to the edge of the woods. He set her free, allowing her to return to her people. Seraphine was stoked to be home, and her family was just as equally stoked to have her home. Seraphine was so happy that she went into labour that night. Seraphine Long gave birth to a human Bigfoot hybrid. The baby lived for only a few hours. When Seraphine told her story to J.W. Burns, she was well into her 70s, which may be why Burns didn't push for too many details regarding what was surely a terrible experience for the woman. Seraphine Long passed away not long after telling her story to Burns. Were these women abducted by 8 black men? Who knows? But there are lots and lots of them, and they come up all the time. And luckily, I managed to save quite a lot of them. And there's one here from Washington State Park, and it happened in 1977, and it's in Connolly State Park, Washington. In 1977, early in the morning, a dishevelled and confused Bernice Rutenbar stumbled out of the woods into a Connolly campsite. Rutenbar's clothes were in tatters and her hair was matted and full of twigs. Rutenbar claimed that she'd been grabbed out of her sleeping bag about 90 days ago by a Bigfoot. The creature took her to his lair, where it made her his wife. Rutenbar had to have relations with the beast, clean up and prepare food that the monster brought back to the cave. Rutenbar was unable to escape because the Bigfoot rolled a big boulder in front of the cave, opening when it left for the day. After many days of torment and nights alone, Rutenbar was able to escape when the Bigfoot left a hole in the cave entrance. Rutenbar wandered around for a day or two before finding the campsites again. There was no physical evidence that Rutenbar had been violated by a Bigfoot, nor was she able to locate the cave she claimed she escaped from. She was able to sell the rights of her story to a CD paperback novelist who published a book called Bigfoot My Husband, which was loosely based on Rutenberg's tale. Another account that we have comes from Priest Lake State Park, Idaho, and this happened in 1983. James Conner set up a series of Bigfoot traps in and around Priest Lake. He was encouraged to do so by several sightings and documented Bigfoot prints that he'd cast in plaster. Connie's traps consisted of raw and cooked whole chickens, with a trigger and a suspended net. Connie planned on purchasing photographic evidence as soon as he could save the money. In the meantime, these net traps were the best he could do. After several weeks of setting up the traps and returning with no results other than rotten chicken, Connie found something that excites him to this day. In one of the traps, in the most remote location in the woods, that Connie only checked twice a month, he found a gift. Both chickens were completely devoured. Only a few bones remained scattered, and hanging from the ropes in the net were bunches of dried flowers, meticulously placed, with a delicate touch so as not to spring the trap. The dried flowered bunches were beautiful wildflowers, and when Connie had the flowers identified by his friend, a local florist, he was amazed to discover that most of the flowers came from miles away, if not other areas of the nation. Connie developed the theory that Bigfoot must carry these flowers around, either to make gifts of them, or as a seasoning for whatever food it might scavenge. Naysayers claim that the dried flowers were placed by kids. Others claim Connie is lying and found the flower arrangements in a dumpster behind the party centre after a wedding and created the story around them. Connie's traps never have ever trapped anything else. That's a lovely little story. And then in 1890, in Platte Valley, Nebraska, wildfires are blamed on Bigfoots. The drought that gripped Nebraska in 1890 was the cause of immense suffering in the Platte Valley. Farmers commiserated about the drought. While holding a meeting at a local church, the alarm was raised. There was a fire, and it quickly spread from Old Miller's fields into the neighbouring farms. The fires burned for nearly a week and burned over 300 acres, decimating whatever crops were growing. After the last smouldering embers were stamped out, an investigation was undertaken. The Smith boy, Alfred, claimed that he heard the hounds barking and ran to the back porch to see what was agitating them. Fearing a fox, he took a shotgun as he went towards the chicken coop. That is when he saw a 15-foot-tall, hairy wild man running to the barn. The horses started going crazy, so Alfred hung his lantern over the hook near the barn door and slowly entered. As he did, the creature pushed him over. Alfred managed to fire a shotgun once, which missed the monster, but enraged the beast. As he swung his arms about, it knocked the lantern over. A fire spread quickly through the barn and into the dry field behind it. Alfred was lucky to escape with his life. Albert, if I was your mum, I'd be questioning that story, but never mind. And I have a lovely bunch of tales here. These are from, some of them are from Europe. Sorry, I'm just pulling them up. The internet's quite laggy tonight. This one is from Spain, and it's in Sienra, I think it's pronounced. And it says, probably about 800 years ago, a baby was abducted. An infant boy was stolen from his nanny, but a swift rescue party managed to find the boy being happily sucking on one of the tits of the animal. The animal was described as a hairy human, and they chased away the wild woman and retrieved the baby. The Serrana wild woman was referred to as a bear woman. And then in Savoy in France, the village of Naves, a female abduction cited in writing in 1605. And this is Antoinette Collette that was in the first part of this episode. And she was taken by Bigfoot. And he brought her bread and fruit and cheese and linen and thread, so he was quite a good husband. And then in the Alvard Dauphine district of France in the late 19th century, we have a male abduction. And the young lumberjack Barn was about to cross a hill at night to visit his fiancée when he was taken and slung over the shoulders of a hairy giant and brought to the cave with a group of brown, long-haired creatures talking in a strange language. The biggest hairy man was about 8 feet and looked almost human and had long arms and big hands. After several hours, Bourne pulled out his pipe, which was snatched away. In the following fight over the pipe, Bourne managed to escape, and locals called such creatures Marfalats. You will note that this story sounds a great deal like the 1924 kidnapping account of the Swedish immigrant Albert Osman. Osman told of his sleeping bag being thrown over the Sasquatch's shoulders with him in it, and how he was brought back to the canyon to a family of 4 Bigfoot that uttered short phrases that seemed to carry meaning. Osman eventually escaped when he used a tin of snuff to confuse the guarding Sasquatch. And then in Bracon, France, in the Alps, in the late 19th century, we have a male who was abducted, and a man was missing for days. When found, he told that he had been abducted by a hairy forest man and kept in a cave with his female, and the female had 2 children. He was fed some berries, but eventually they lost interest in him. And then we go to Spain, and it's 1920, and it's a female abduction. And a young couple were tending farm animals in the Sierra Morena mountains when the female was taken by an ape when she was washing clothes in a stream. She was kept in a cave and interfered with, but escaped eventually. The resulting baby girl, Annika, known as the daughter of orangutan, had a hairy body, long arms, and an ape-like mouth. Eric Naturud also writes that he knows of 3 cases from Sweden, not really about abduction, but about having relationships with hairy females out in the forest at night. Here, the wild women are called skogar, masters of the forest. In the country Norway, there are many local anecdotes about abductions, probably very ancient legends. Very strange, since I've not been able to find the slightest trolls living here today, says Eric. For a little bit of translation and interpretation for the English reading audience, a troll is just a little person, is what we think, but it isn't actually. The old trolls, the original trolls, were huge giants that lived out on the tundra and would lead you away with lights and trickery, would make noises and howls and shake the trees and leave footprints behind in the snow. So that suggests to me that there's always been, Bigfoots on every continent in the world. And I'll just see what else I've got in my notes. I'm just pulling another file. Just give me a second. I've had so many. We know the Albert Osmond one, don't we? We don't need to give that one again. There we go. I'm just opening it up. Won't be a second. On the morning of June the 1st, 1987, 16-year-old Teresa Bear and 43-year-old Russell Skip Welsh set off for a camping trip in the Shut-Eye Peak area of the Sierra National Forest. Welsh had told Teresa all about the mythical Bigfoot, a half-man, half-ape creature said to roam around the forest across the United States, and the two embarked upon an adventure in the hopes of catching a glimpse of the legend for themselves. According to Skip's account of the day Teresa Bear was last seen, they were both wandering down the towpaths of the Sierra Nevada mountains in search of Sasquatch when the two somehow became separated, and Welsh, a self-professed student of Bigfoot, who claims to have been in close personal contact with the creatures, believes that it was during this time that Teresa had been kidnapped by Bigfoot. Fresno police were dubious of Welsh far-fetched claims and immediately placed Welsh under arrest. Teresa's body has never been located. I'd be investigating the husband as well if it was me. Let's have a look what we've got. There's another one. Sorry, no, that's a British one. I'll leave the British ones for another day. Not a British abduction, just a British case. 1 second. I've got them stored under so many names. Well, there we go with Albert Osman again. I don't know if any of you know about the Albert Osman case. It happened, from what I can remember, it was about 1924 or something, and he was camping. He was in his sleeping bag and he was making coffee. And the Sasquatch came along and picked him up and took him away, and he stayed with the family, and he made some coffee and gave it. The Bigfoot drank it without it being cold, cooling down, and he drank it and he spat it out. At which point he grabbed it was the other way around. He put the snuff up his nose, and that made him cough and cough and cough and cough. So he grabbed the coffee and he drank it, and it was really hot. And that enabled Osman to escape. And that's a very famous story. Lots and lots of people know those stories. But there is another one, and that's what I was looking for. I actually found it, and it's much like Harry. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that story. Just give me a second. Oh, we'll do the Fred Beck one. Fred Beck one's a good one. 1924, Ape Canyon, Mount St. Helens. Fred Beck and several other prospectors were puzzled by very large footprints they found in a canyon, until they encountered the beast that made them. They saw a large ape-like creature peering from behind a tree, watching them. One of the miners levelled his rifle at the creature. He shot and possibly grazed it in the head. It ran off, out of the sight. Later, another creature was seen by Beck, as it stood at the edge of the canyon. Beck shot it in the back. It fell, irretrievably, into the canyon. These acts of violence by the humans was not to go unavenged by the Sasquatch. That night, the miners' cabin was attacked by at least 2 of the primates. For 5 hours, they pounded on the door and walls and hurled rocks onto the roof in an attempt to break in. Fortunately, the windowless cabin, built to withstand harsh winters, kept the Sasquatch from entering. As dawn approached, the creatures abandoned their assault, and when the miners finally ventured outside, they found numerous big footprints all around the cabin, and a strip of wood gouged out from between the logs. There is some evidence that this attack may have been an hoax. Well, I actually remember I think it was not last year, the year before, that they actually found the remains of that cabin. A couple of researchers went out and actually found the cabin. Obviously, it was that long ago. There was no bodies there or anything like that. It was just the foundations of the abandoned cabin where it happened. And in 1928, there was a Vancouver man, and his name was much like Harry. And he also claimed to have been kidnapped by Bigfoot. And he was a powerfully built Indian of the Nootka tribe. And he was plying his trade in one of his favourite hunting grounds. And he was known for his trapping skills and his tracking skills. It was said that he could track any man over a number of days and find him, be it man, mountain lion or bear. And like Osman, Harry was picked up in his sleep, bedding and all, and carried for about 3 miles by a large Sasquatch. When set down, he found himself surrounded by about 20 of the creatures, both male and female, which he at first thought planned to eat him, as their campsite was littered with large bones. The creature poked and prodded Harry, seemingly puzzled by his clothing, and after a while he appeared to grow tired of the human curiosity and left the camp. Seeing his chance, Harry made a run for it, running past his own camp to his canoe on the river. He never went trapping in that area of the woods again. And our final one for tonight is from 1977, and it's from New Jersey, and it's not the first place one thinks of when Sasquatch is mentioned. But this report attack comes from the rural area of that state in May of 1977. The Sykes family were disturbed by something that had broken into their barn and crushed several of their rabbits to death. The predator returned that night, and the Sykes saw it clearly, standing in their well-lit yard. It was big and hairy, Mrs. Sykes reported. It was brown. It looked like a human with a beard and a moustache. It had no neck. It looked like its head was just sitting on its shoulders, and it had big, red, glowing eyes. When the Sykes dog attacked it, the creature effortlessly swatted it away, sending it flying about 20 feet. On subsequent nights, the creature was seen several more times by the Sykes. And I will bring you some more stories next time. Until then, good night.